Okay, now I want to bridge back just a little bit to your road to Roota theory, because for those of us who have been listening to you and have read your road to Roota theory, you've got a lot of great information in there, and we want to believe it. We want to believe that there are some knights in shining armor that are trying to do the right thing, and it was their goal, according to you, to bankrupt the bankers by allowing them to hang themselves. And now that we see that happening, we see a lot of other good things happening, like Ron Paul coming to the forefront. Here's my question. We see so many tyrannical things happening. The reality is we're seeing so much bad stuff perpetrated by the bad guys, not the least of which is this new NDAA bill, S-1867, which is going to allow the military to treat the United States, quote-unquote, homeland, a term I hate, as a battlefield and treat the American people as the enemy. It's just beyond the pale. Now, what's your take on all this tyrannical legislation?
I know it's very frightening to people, and it is completely unconstitutional, against our laws, against our liberty, but when things like this happen, you need to remember that everything will change when there's the next banking crash. It's not all that far from where we've been for the last 20 years. We've strayed away from the legal system. We've strayed away from the Constitution. We've gone to war in all these countries without declaring it, because it sets up what a lot of people feel is coming down the pike by the bad guys. The turning into a military state, taking away all our freedoms, things like that. And that was the plan all along by the bad guys. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to take over America and destroy our country and take over the world, create a one world government, things like that. And that's all that stuff, along with what's going on at MF Global, how they're completely disregarding bankruptcy law, and all that stuff will go away if the good guys win. And there's something called nullification, that states can nullify federal laws, and all that will come into play when we have a large banking crash. And it's up to we, the people, to stand up and say, we're going to turn to Ron Paul, and we're not going to turn to Newt Gingrich or Mitt Romney and all these bad guys that are now in office. It's going to take the people of the United States to stand up when this happens, which I'm absolutely positive it'll happen sometime next year, and to stand up and say, okay, we are done with the way you want our lives to be. We're going to stand up for the Constitution. We're going to turn to Ron Paul, and it's time. You can see it. You can sense it in the air that the world is waking up, especially because Ron Paul, of what he talks about, and people are saying, well, yeah, it's all well and good, but how will that affect us today? If we turn to a banking crash and these bankers go down again, much like it started in 2008, they barely got saved, but it was just, they gave them a couple more years. If we turn to the banking crash, if it happens in the first half of the year, you're going to see the people of the United States will be given a choice. Do we turn to Ron Paul, or do we turn into Obama's military state? And there will be a choice, and I believe we will stand up and say, that's it. All these laws that are unconstitutional, all these laws that limit our freedoms, get rid of them. We don't need them. We don't want them. We're going to go back to our Constitution.
Well, very good, Bix. I think that, to kick off 2012 or to end 2011 with a conversation with you is really on point, because it's nice to hear some good news. And we all want to get on board with the good news. And the good news is that you think the good guys are going to take this thing back, and we sure hope you're right. Why don't you leave us with your thoughts again on silver? Not to be silver cheerleaders, but for anybody paying attention who has seen that first Majestic video on how difficult it is to mine silver and refine it. Anybody that owns physical silver has to appreciate what they've got more when they realize how incredibly difficult it is to find the stuff, pull it out of the ground, and refine it. What's your position on $27 or $25 or $20 silver? Aren't the bad guys breaking their own backs by bringing the prices down this low?
I think they are, because it draws more attention to it. But it's one of those things. Silver isn't $25 or $50 or $100 or $1,000. Nobody knows what the true fair market value of silver is. It's rigged every day, and it has been since the early 70s. So, you get more back to, okay, I have some investment money. where do I want to put it? One, we can see from the MF Global debacle that you don't want anybody between you and your investment money. No brokerage account, no. You see, it kind of gets into my feeling on mining companies. Although they're going to own some very valuable metal in the ground, there's all these other layers that you need to understand, that like the DTCC, which controls all the certificates supposedly, is the biggest fraud known to man. And it hasn't come out yet, but it will, that the float of these companies, say they have 50 million shares out there. Well, 50 million shares of these companies trade in a week. So you start to wonder, well, are these real trades? These high-frequency traders stick their computers right next to the exchange so they can skim off the top. It's a gigantic Ponzi scheme that when the music stops, as we found at MF Global, when the music stops, there's a bunch of missing money. There's a bunch of missing certificates. So to be safe, and more than just being safe, to make a sound investment, an investment that will really go off the charts, you got to own your physical metal in your own possession. And if you're looking for that, the leverage that a mining company gives you, just think of the amount of leverage owning physical silver will give you if the whole thing falls apart and there's all these third-party defaults and things like that. Everybody and their mother is going to be chasing after physical silver in their own possession. So, in gold as well, but there's a lot more gold out there than people are saying. There's hidden gold mines in the Grand Canyon. There's hidden gold mines at Chocolate Mountain down in California, and this is all part of the plan for the United States to go back on a gold and silver standard. So, if you're now I tend to stray these days because silver can be so all-consuming in your mind when you start investing in it. I'm only talking about investment dollars, and you should use other money and other wealth that you have to secure your house, the place you live, the food that you have stored up, your protection, your supplies, things like that. That's most important. Secondary is investment dollars, and those, yes, I believe physical silver in your own possession will be one of the few things that save you in this coming meltdown.
Well, Bix, before we let you go, do you want to just, for new listeners, do a brief, I don't even know if it's fair to ask you to do a brief recap of your Road to Roota theory. It's so broad and there's so much great research there. But for those to whom this information is new, why don't you tell us briefly what the Road to Roota theory is and how people can read your detailed articles about it? Where do they find those on your website?
Sure, and it used to be very difficult to explain, but the more it got proven to be valid and true, the easier it is. Back in the 1960s and early 70s, the U.S. was having trouble with their pseudo-gold standard. And what was decided by Nixon, because the French were pulling all their gold out of the U.S., trading their dollars in, we decided to close the gold window that's basically the time we went off the gold standard. And at that time, there were certain economists who had written technical papers on the best way to return to a gold standard, and one of those was called On the Road to the Golden Age. And that was a theory that if you're going to go from an unbacked currency to a backed currency, backed with gold, before you do that, you run the currency system as long and hard as you can. And that's what we've been doing since the 1970s. And Alan Greenspan and this guy named John Kimeny and this guy Stephen Duveau were in charge of putting computer programs in place in the early 70s to control the markets, rig the markets so that people don't get too excited about gold and silver, because those are really the only alternatives to an unpacked paper system. So this has been going on since the early 70s, and we're at that point now when it was kind of taken over by other people who had computer programs and the banking cabal and things like that. But we're at that point now where it's time to turn off the computers, return to a gold standard, and completely wipe out all these paper and electronic fiat unbacked monetary instruments. And you really do have to wipe everything out to start fresh, because right now every single person, every state and local government, everybody on earth except for a very, very few, upper elite, are massively in debt. So that's where we are now. 2012 most likely will be that turning point where they turn off the computer programs, they wipe out all the malinvestment and the bad debt and bad monetary instruments, and we get to return to a gold and silver standard. And I proved this through all these documents released by the Federal Reserve Boston, and you can see it in the new $100 bill. I have a great article about that where they show gold and overthrowing your government right on the bill. So all these things are coming true, and it'll be a little scary, but once you understand what's going on, you'll understand how we can get through this and return to a more sound system of governance, a more sound monetary system, and going forward, how the future can be very bright for the world, especially in the United States.
And BIX, being that 2012 is right on top of us, I'm going to throw you a curveball because I think I'd be remiss not to ask you about the Mayan calendar and what you think December 21st, 2012 holds. For those who have asked me, I've always said that I think December 22nd is going to look a lot like December 20th. We all may just be a lot poorer, who knows. But what do you see coming with the Mayan calendar and the end of the age? Is it just a new awakening? Because I'm seeing a lot of people waking up. I'm seeing humanity wake up, which is darn good news.
This is getting a little off topic, but I love the conspiracy stuff, so I'll tell you my take on it. I do believe it's a new age and a new understanding, and a lot of that is not necessarily on that specific date, but will transpire, especially monetarily, during this year. We're going to see mass chaos, and we're going to see a return to a more sound monetary system. And a lot of that, I believe, is in preparation for what's coming down in December at the end of the year. And for me, it transcends the economics and it transcends the social issues. It's more of a physical planetary situation, and I've learned a lot from Cliff High at halfpasthuman.com and the whole planetary expansion theory versus plate tectonics. It will be much more of an earth changes type event. It won't be the end of the world at all, but I think the end of the monetary world and our system of governments is coming much sooner than that. I'm looking at March it begins and then goes for 6 months, and then we kind of get to the other side before all these earth changes happen at the end of the year. So that's my crazy take on it. But remember, you asked.
Well, thanks for that, Bix. I think people will find that intriguing, and all we can do is use conjecture. Nobody knows what's coming, but we know what's coming in terms of the monetary system, and it's not going to get better. In fact, Obama wants to raise the debt ceiling once again, and there's just no end in sight. They're going to continue to print fiat, and they're going to try to fill this hole with fiat cash, and that's why you and I and others say take your fiat cash and turn it into something tangible like physical precious metals. So, Bix, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time. Tell people how to find some of your free work on the internet or how to subscribe to your newsletter.
Well, you can go to roadtoroota.com, and there's a whole bunch of free articles and information. If you click on the archives button at the end of each section, there's also a paid subscriber version that gets more in depth, and you have access to all. I think there's 800 articles now, so it's a good time. And I try to keep everybody up to date on how things fit into the Road to Roota theory and timing and things like that. So come by, take a visit, and search around and learn about the stranger part of the gold and silver market.
Appreciate talking with you, Bix. We really do. It's always an interesting conversation. And as we've said, as you've said, as so many others have said, Alex Jones, so many people note that it's important in this day and age to use your discernment. Take a look at what everybody is saying and then use your own judgment and discernment to draw your own conclusions. And I don't think people can come to the proper conclusions without at least considering your theories and really digging into it. So people can do that at roadtoroota.com. Oh, and Happy New Year, Bix. Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Hey, you too, Sean, and I really enjoy, logging into your site and listening to the next guy chime in about what's going on in the crazy world we live in.
I appreciate that, and I want to let everybody know, too, that, yes, I've been doing a ton of interviews lately, and I've really slowed down on the silver updates and things like that, and I want to get back to that. I miss doing those. There's so much to talk about. Sometimes it's so hard to keep up, Bix, and you know this, that having a conversation with a like-minded person gives you the opportunity to cover more ground, and that's why I value time together with people like you and Andy Hoffman and Bob Chapman and James Turk and all the others. So we wish you a Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again sometime in 2012.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks for tuning in, and visit SGT Report for all the latest on a daily basis. Thanks for watching. Good night.